In 2023, Blake Shelton made a phone call that ended one of television's most beloved friendships. No warning, no explanation, just silence.
Outside of this one church town, there's a gold.
For years, he and Kelly Clarkson looked inseparable, laughing, roasting each other, making The Voice feel like family. But behind the scenes, something was rotting. A $2.6 million legal bomb. A management empire that crumbled, and a sacrifice Blake made that Kelly never acknowledged. He moved on without looking back. And now? They don't even speak. What really destroyed them? The truth is uglier than anyone wants to admit. And it started long before the cameras ever turned off.
This is Tuesday night, I'm bowling.
Blake Allison Shelton was born June 18, 1976, in Ada, Oklahoma. Small town, slow life, the kind of place where most people stay and most dreams quietly die. His mom, Dorothy, ran a beauty salon, cutting hair for a few bucks a session, working long hours with tired hands. His dad, Richard, sold used cars off a gravel lot, living off commissions that weren't ever guaranteed. There was no safety net in that house, no cushion. Just two parents grinding every day to keep the lights on. Blake grew up dealing with bullies at school and chores waiting at home. But even in that environment, music found him before almost anything else did. His mom used to enter him in local pageants when he was barely old enough to understand what a stage was. He'd sing for candy, simple prizes. Nothing that looked like the beginning of something real, but something was already growing inside him. Quiet, stubborn, impossible to stop. The real shift came in the summer of 1988. Blake was 12 years old, standing in the backyard at a family barbecue when one of his uncles handed him this old acoustic guitar and showed him a few chords under the Oklahoma sky. That moment, just a few minutes on a summer afternoon, changed the entire direction of his life. He went home and played Hank Williams Jr. songs till his fingers bled from the strings. He wasn't just playing music, he was finding a way out. By 15, he'd already written his first heartbreak song, That Girl Made a Fool Out of Me, after some local crush humiliated him in the way only teenage rejection can. He took that pain and turned it into words. That habit of converting hurt into music would follow him for the rest of his life. At 16, he was performing in bars and small venues around Oklahoma, places like Ada's McSwain Theater, singing for oil workers who liked the rough honesty in his voice. The money was almost nothing, sometimes just tips tossed into a jar. But it felt like proof that he wasn't just dreaming.
I need you.
On November 13, 1990, when Blake was just 14 years old, his older brother Richie was killed in a car crash near Ada. Richie was 24. He and Blake shared music, stories, and a kind of bond that younger brothers carry quietly for years. Richie's girlfriend and her young son also died in that same wreck. The crash happened in the morning. And when the news reached home, it didn't just break Blake's heart, it fractured something inside him that never fully healed. People close to Blake would later connect that loss to almost everything difficult that followed. The drinking, the anger, the tendency to use humor like armor when real emotion got too close. That grief never really left. It just went underground, and years later, it resurfaced in one of his most emotional songs, Over You, which he wrote with Miranda Lambert. The feeling inside that song was so raw because it wasn't manufactured. It came from a place he'd never fully escaped. That's what made it hit so hard for so many people who had no idea what was really behind it. Even carrying that pain, Blake kept moving. In 1992, at 16, he won Oklahoma's Denbo Diamond Award, beating out hundreds of young performers with an original song. The win brought prize money and statewide attention. Suddenly, Ada was looking at him differently. The old life began to feel way too small. He'd tasted what it felt like to stand out, and there was no going back from that. After graduating Ada High School in May 1994, Blake made the move that would define his entire future. Just a couple weeks after finishing school, still only 17, he packed up with barely $200, a guitar, and a phone number for Mae Boren Axton, the songwriter who helped write Heartbreak Hotel. That was it. That was the whole plan. and he got on a bus to Nashville anyway.
For only you and God to hear when you love someone to say.
When he arrived, May put him to work painting her house and slowly connected him to the right people. But Nashville didn't roll out any red carpet. The early years were full of rejection, silence, and the kind of grinding struggle that nobody puts on their highlight reel. He wrote songs for publishers, cut demos, painted houses on the side. Labels kept looking past him. They saw a tall kid from Oklahoma, but not a star. Not yet. One moment that might have broken him came when a song being considered for his debut, I Want to Talk About Me, got dropped and later became a #1 hit for Toby Keith. Someone else sang his song straight to the top of the charts. And Blake was still waiting for his first real break. That's the kind of thing that quietly destroys people from the inside. But Blake didn't quit. A turning point came in 1997 when legendary producer Bobby Braddock took a chance on him. Braddock was already a major name in country music, and his belief in Blake shifted the temperature in the room. But even then, years passed with no real momentum. Plans changed, executives wavered, and Blake sat in this in-between space, signed but invisible, carrying Richie's ghost and a dream that kept refusing to die. Then came Austin, a song the label didn't even fully believe in. When it hit radio in 2001, something happened that nobody predicted. Calls flooded in. Stations kept spinning it. By August 11, 2001, Austin reached #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and stayed there for 5 straight weeks. It crossed onto the Hot 100. His debut album went platinum. And every single person who'd ever looked past him suddenly went very, very quiet.
You're wasting your time. I'm not buying.
Almost nobody talks about, right as Austin was exploding, Giant Records, the label carrying Blake, was shutting down. In almost any other version of this story, that kills the momentum completely. The timing was so tight it felt almost supernatural. Warner absorbed him without breaking the wave, and songs like All Over Me and Old Red kept him moving forward. A few weeks earlier or later, and you might never have heard of Blake Shelton. That's how thin the margin was. Through the 2000s, he stacked hit after hit. The Baby, Some Beach, Home, Hillbilly Bone. By 2010, he was one of the most reliable names in country music. And then, on October 23, 2010, Trace Atkins surprised him on the Grand Ole Opry stage with an invitation to become a member. Blake brought his parents from Oklahoma to watch. He stood on that stage and lived a dream that most country singers never reach. For a kid who showed up in Nashville with $200 and a borrowed phone number, that moment meant everything. But success, turns out, was only the beginning of the complications. Because around the same time his career was rising, his personal life was starting to fracture in ways the public was about to become real familiar with. And the choices he made inside those fractures, the loyalties he chose, the bridges he burned, those decisions would eventually lead him straight into the conflict with Kelly Clarkson that nobody saw coming until the silence became impossible to ignore. Keep watching. Because the next part of this story is where everything really starts to fall apart. There's a version of Blake Shelton the public fell in love with easy laugh, quick joke. The big Oklahoma guy who never seemed to take anything too seriously. That version sold. It worked on country radio, worked on The Voice, and worked on every late-night appearance, where he'd make the room crack up without even trying. But behind that version, there was a man who'd been quietly building walls since 1990, using humor to keep people from getting close enough to see the real damage underneath. And by 2011, both his personal life and his television career were growing in directions that would eventually collide in the worst possible way.
Thing that ever happened to you.
Had married his high school sweetheart, Kaynette Gurn, back in 2003. But touring pulled him away for months at a stretch, and by 2006, the marriage had ended in divorce. Not long after, he met Miranda Lambert during a duet performance in 2005, and the chemistry between them was obvious from the first moment. People started talking right away, whispers about timing, about overlap, about whether everything was as clean as the public story suggested. By 2011, Blake and Miranda were married and looked almost untouchable. Country music's golden couple, magazine covers, awards, red carpets, the whole fairy tale. But cracks were forming behind the scenes almost immediately. Careers kept them apart. Trust issues surfaced, rumors circled. And then in July 2015, it was over. Fast, messy, and very public. Fans split into camps overnight, and both sides got dragged through headlines that were ugly even by Nashville standards. That same year, Blake joined The Voice as one of its original coaches back in 2011, and by the time Miranda's divorce was hitting tabloids, he was already one of the most recognizable faces on American television. The show changed everything. Suddenly, he wasn't just a country radio name, he was a personality. Funny, unpredictable, genuinely entertaining in a way that translated across every demographic. And that expanded world eventually brought him into a friendship that looked for several years like one of the most genuine connections in all of celebrity television. When Kelly Clarkson joined The Voice in 2018, something clicked almost immediately. They came from totally different musical worlds. She was pop and power, he was twang and dirt roads, but on screen, they fit together like they'd been doing this for years. The banter felt real because it was real. The jokes landed because neither of them was performing for the camera. They were genuinely in each other's corners, and viewers felt that. You can't fake that kind of warmth, not week after week, not under studio lights with producers watching from every angle. That chemistry was real. What made their friendship even more layered was the fact that both of them had survived very public divorces and knew exactly what it felt like to have private heartbreak turned into public entertainment. Kelly's split from Brandon Blackstock added an especially complicated dimension because Brandon had once managed Blake. He came from the Blackstock family management empire, Starstruck Management, which had deep roots inside Blake's career for years. So when Kelly filed for divorce on June 4, 2020, and started making serious accusations about how Starstruck had operated, this stopped being just a celebrity breakup. This became a business earthquake. Kelly testified that Starstruck had functioned as an unlicensed talent agency in California, charging her massive commissions on deals that should never have been structured that way, including commissions tied directly to her work on The Voice. She also revealed something that hit differently on a personal level. She said Brandon had once told her years before she joined the show that she wasn't sexy enough for a coaching role. He claimed NBC wanted someone with a different image and kept her from even knowing the real opportunity existed. Then, when she eventually got on the show anyway and succeeded massively, the same management structure continued taking money from her success. A California labor commissioner later ruled in her favor and ordered Brandon to repay more than $2.6 million in unlawful commissions. That ruling didn't just validate her claims, it made people rethink everything they thought they knew about how this whole system worked. But here's where it gets crazy. Blake didn't stay quiet. He didn't try to protect the business relationship he'd built with Starstruck over many years. He walked away from them. Completely. This wasn't a small move. He'd been one of their most valuable clients for a long time, and leaving meant choosing a friendship over a business infrastructure that had helped build his career. In Nashville, where the line between personal loyalty and professional survival is razor thin, that kind of decision sends shockwaves. It cost him something real. And the people on the other side of that decision, Brandon and Narvel Blackstock, felt that loss in a very tangible way. Losing Blake Shelton as a client wasn't just symbolic. It hit their operation in the wallet and in the reputation. So Blake burned a bridge for Kelly. And she moved forward. She fought her legal battles. She relocated the Kelly Clarkson Show from Los Angeles to New York in 2023, looking for a fresh start in a city that didn't hold the same painful memories. The new environment gave her energy. The show thrived. Kelly rebuilt, visibly and publicly, in a way that looked like someone choosing themselves after years of being quietly diminished by a system designed to benefit everyone around her. The New York chapter looked like freedom. And for a while it seemed like both she and Blake were moving forward together, still carrying that friendship forward into the new version of their lives. Not really, because once Blake left The Voice after season 23 in May 2023, the structure that had kept them connected every single week, the rehearsals, the blind auditions, the chair turns, the between, takes moments that nobody films, all of that disappeared. And without that built-in daily orbit, the friendship had no natural habitat to live in anymore. People forget how much of any relationship is actually just proximity. When you see someone every day, you don't have to work at closeness. It just happens. When that routine vanishes, you find out fast whether what you had was real connection or just comfortable habit? For Blake and Kelly, the answer seemed to be somewhere in between. And that in-between space is where the silence grew.
The way you did, you felt so.
Sources close to Blake have suggested that something else was happening beneath the surface. That the sacrifice he made, walking away from Starstruck, damaging those relationships, putting himself in a complicated position, never felt fully acknowledged. When one person burns bridges for another, and the other simply moves forward into their next chapter without looking back, resentment has a way of growing in that gap. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. The way most real heartbreaks actually happen, not with a confrontation, but with a slow withdrawal that eventually becomes permanent. There were also details that surfaced during Kelly's divorce case that may have made Blake feel unexpectedly exposed. Private conversations, internal frustrations, things he might have shared in confidence during years of genuine friendship, some of those feelings seemed to echo in the public testimony and media coverage in ways that blurred the line between ally and source. Whether that was intentional or simply the nature of a massive legal proceeding, the effect on trust can be devastating. Once you start wondering what stays private and what doesn't, closeness becomes a liability. By 2024, Blake was leaning deeper into the ranch life in Oklahoma, stepping back from the entertainment machine in a way that felt deliberate rather than passive. Gwen was navigating her own balancing act between pop tours, television, and the family life they were both trying to build together. Their own dynamic took real effort. Two people from completely different worlds finding a rhythm that worked. And inside all of that, the space where Blake and Kelly's friendship once lived was simply, social media moments stopped. The public appearances together stopped. The energy that once made fans light up every time they appeared in the same frame, gone. And what replaced it wasn't a fight or a public falling out. Just silence. The kind that lands heavier than any argument, because it doesn't give you anything to push back against. You can't fight silence. You can only notice it. So what really broke them apart? A business empire that collapsed. A divorce that forced everyone to choose sides. A sacrifice that went unreciprocated, and two people whose lives pulled them in directions so different that the friendship, however real it once was, ran out of room to breathe. Maybe that's the saddest part of all, not that they fought, but that they didn't. That something warm and genuine just quietly faded out, the way the best things sometimes do when life gets too loud and too complicated and too far apart. What do you think really happened between Blake and Kelly? Do you think the friendship can come back? Or is this silence permanent? Drop your answer in the comments, because honestly, I think this one's going to surprise people. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it with someone who used to watch them together every week on The Voice. They deserve to know the full picture.